You are listening to the IFH Podcast Network. For more amazing filmmaking and screenwriting podcasts, just go to ifhpodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome to the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, episode number 419. If the people we love are stolen from us, the way we have to live is to never stop loving them. Buildings burn, people die, but real love is forever. Sarah from The Crow.
Broadcasting from the back alley in Hollywood, it's the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, where we show you how to survive and thrive as an indie filmmaker in the jungles of the film biz. And here's your host, Alex Ferrari.
Welcome to another episode of the Indie Film Hustle Podcast. I am your humble host, Alex Ferrari. Today's show is sponsored by Rise of the Filmtrepreneur, how to turn your independent film into a profitable business. It's harder today than ever before for independent filmmakers to make money with their films. From predatory film distributors ripping them off to huckster film aggregators who prey upon them, the odds are stacked against the indie filmmaker. The old distribution model of making money with your film is broken, and there needs to be a change. The future of independent filmmaking is the entrepreneurial filmmaker or the filmtrepreneur. In Rise of the Filmtrepreneur, I break down how to actually make money with your film projects and show you how to turn your indie film into a profitable business. With case studies examining successes and failures, this book shows you the step-by-step method to turn your passion into a profitable career. If you're making a feature film, series, or any other kind of video content, the Filmtrepreneur method will set you up for success. The book is available in paperback, ebook, and of course, audiobook. If you want to order it, just head over to www.filmbizbook.com. That's filmbizbook.com. Now, guys, before we get started, I just wanted to thank you all for making the Black Friday and Cyber Monday sale so successful. Everybody really loved what we were doing over there. And as a gift, I wanted to extend the sale at IFH Academy until the end of the week. So you have, if you missed out on the sale on Black Friday or Cyber Monday, you can get the same pricing all week long. Just head over to ifhacademy.com. No coupon needed. And if you want to also check out Indie Film Hustle TV, where you can get over 2,000 lessons from screenwriting, filmmaking, producing, documentaries about making movies, and so on, you're getting the same Cyber Monday sale there as well, which is 40% off the entire year, just $57. And if you want to go there, all you got to do is go to indiefilmhustle.tv and use the coupon code CYBERWEEK20. Now, guys, I cannot be more excited to bring you today's episode because on the show today, we have the legendary writer-director Alex Proyas, the filmmaker behind The Crow, Dark City, The Knowing, Gods of Egypt, and I, Robot. Alex has had a huge influence on my filmmaking life. The Crow is one of those films that I watched thousands of times in the theater when I was in film school. The Crow is one of the first modern comic book adaptations that was outside. I think it was the first that was outside of a DC or Marvel film. But as Alex puts it, that The Crow was his anti-comic book movie. Now, both The Crow and his visually genre-defining film, Dark City, has influenced filmmakers for years. I mean, you can see a direct line from his genre-defining work to films like The Matrix, Alita Battle Angel, Equilibrium, Underworld, The Dark Knight, Inception, and many, many more. He's actually had conversations with Christopher Nolan where he's told him that Dark City and The Crow were really big inspirations for him when he was putting together the Dark Knight trilogy. I mean, if you look at The Matrix and then you watch Dark City, you can see that Dark City is oozing from so many frames of The Matrix. Now, in this conversation, Alex and I discuss his career working within the studio system, dealing with insane interference in his creative visions for his films, why he's shooting short films at this stage of his career, and his new film studio, the Heretic Foundation, as well as all his misadventures in Hollywood. He's also launched a YouTube channel called Mystery Clock Cinema, where he showcases his new short films, amazing filmmaking tutorials, philosophies, and live streams. I want you to now prepare yourself to be inspired, because after I talked to Alex, I swear to God, I just wanted to grab a camera and just start shooting again and experimenting again and just doing that thing. It just kind of reinvigorated that film student back in the 90s when I was in film school. So without any further ado, please enjoy my thoroughly entertaining conversation with filmmaker Alex Proyas. I'd like to welcome to the show Alex Proyas. How you doing, Alex?
Yeah, hi, Alex. Good to see you. Good to speak to you.
Yes, it's been. I'm honored that you come on the show. I'm a huge fan of your work, and I know the tribe is going to be very excited to kind of dig into your history, your films, your process. You are easily one of the most visual directors of your generation, without question. And I argue to say that a couple of your films specifically kind of changed the way films were shot afterwards, because you could see the stylistically how things changed after The Crow and after Dark City. You just like, okay, like The Matrix picked up a couple of things from The Crow and things like that.
Well, thank you for saying so. And it's a mutual admiration society, because I very much appreciate what you're doing as well. I think it's awesome. In fact, I've been sort of scouring your website, and I think it's a terrific initiative that you're taking. So well done to you too.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you very much, my friend. I appreciate it. So first and foremost, how did you get started in this insane business?
You know, it's something I've always wanted to do. I started making films when I was a kid, like really 10 years old. I got my first Super. I bugged the hell out of my parents. Being an only child, they eventually succumbed to my wishes and bought me a Super 8 camera. It didn't buy me a projector. I had to save up for that myself. Mm-hmm. But that's how it all started. It's literally like, you know, my dad was a big film goer. He loved films and take me to like totally inappropriate films for a young kid. You know, like you know, I remember him taking me to 2001: A Space Odyssey when I was probably about 6 years old or something like that, and it completely, you know, fried my brain. You know, it was like it fried, you know,
so many more things are
people's brain. And,
it makes so much more sense. Your whole career now makes so much more sense after that.
Yeah. That's right. So I mainlined, you know,
Kubrick,
big, bold, commercial, experimental filmmaking, the ultimate trip, you know, at a very young age. So, you know, obviously had no idea what the hell was going on, as most people didn't anyway. But you know, from that moment, I think I went, you know, I want to, you know, the whole experience, the big screen, the big sound, and conceptually what was going on was just so amazing. It was transporting me into outer space. And so since then, I've always wanted to, you know, I think I started wanting to be an astronaut soon after that. And then I eventually, over a few years, evolved into going, well, I don't need to necessarily go there. I can create that sort of stuff, you know, and that's what I wanted to do, you know. So, yeah, that was the whole instigation of it all, you know.
And then your career started with music videos, correct?
Yeah, well, I got into film school. Actually, you know, even before that, I was working in an animation studio straight out. You know, I left high school early, mm-hmm. and because I knew what I wanted to do, and I went and worked at an animation studio for a while. You know, and because I was kind of good at animating as well, and then got into film school, and then through film school, we came out of film school, me and my colleagues at the time, and in Australia, there was very little potential for breaking into the film industry, particularly as a young person. It was really hard to do. You know, there's so few opportunities, and still to this day, in many ways, because we don't have the studio system. We have very limited, you know, commercial TV stations and stuff to work with. So, me and some friends set up this little company, and by setting up a company, I mean we rented an office and rented a phone and a couple of chairs and a desk and would sit in there and play card games all day long waiting for the phone to ring. And, you know, we had friends in bands. You know, we were all like, the whole scene at the time was very music oriented. And so we started off doing a couple of, you know, music videos for friends in bands and you know, for like nothing, for the cost of the film stock or whatever. And eventually, record companies started paying attention, and we got more and more into the music videos.
Now, what are some of the bad habits you picked up at film school?
Numerous ones. It's look, it's a whole new world. When I went through film school, that's like ancient history now. People these days, I think, YouTube is people's film school. And that can also teach you some very bad habits, I think, as well. I hope you're not teaching anyone bad habits.
I'm only teaching people how to survive and thrive in the business, sir. I do not teach the latest camera gear. Yeah, I'm not teaching the latest camera gear and things like that. That's not my bag.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because it's a bit of a trap these days that you, because you can shoot on your phone and cut on your computer and stuff, and that's all. It's fantastic. I mean, in my day, I had to save up, my dollars to buy a little cartridge of Super 8 film and wait for it to be processed in some other city and mailed back to me and stuff,
Right.
And these days with such accessibility to the technology that makes film, that's got its own fair share of traps as well. But in my day, I guess the bad habits that were taught to me, I mean, they were numerous, and I was being taught by, sort of, at that time, experienced industry professionals who weren't really working in the industry anymore. They started teaching and working as lecturers there, and I guess they were teaching us stuff, the old school way of doing stuff, and a lot of that was how to sort of conform to the film industry and how to find your niche in the traditional, old-fashioned, old-school film industry,
Right.
And of course in Australia that usually meant you go and work for a TV station, shooting news footage or something, incredibly tedious like that, and we were all, you were young and wanting to take over the world, and we wanted to be directors, we wanted to make films, so I sort of quickly broke away from that model. I still subscribe to that, I still go, well, if you want to make a film, just make it. Don't wait for someone to sanction you or your budget or your story. Just get out there and do it. And so even in those days, that was my attitude. Even when there was no money, and you had to scrap enough footage to shoot anything. So that I guess that was, in a way, that's a good habit that was taught to me through bad habits in film school, and I think it still holds true to today,
So in the 90s, I mean, obviously there was a couple movies you made that really just changed my world. One of them being The Crow, and I was in film school when The Crow came out. I was literally in film school. It was 94, right? When The Crow came out, correct?
Yeah, I believe so, yeah.
And I must have seen it in the theater a dozen times. I just kept going back every weekend and watching it again and again. And that amazing soundtrack. That was so, so good. That, in many ways, that was not one of the first, it actually was an early comic book adaptation. It was before Hollywood became comic book happy. It was after Batman. It was obviously after Superman, but it was, I think, the first
that's right
indie comic adapted, correct?
I think so. Yeah. Spawn was also around the same time, but,
right.
I can't remember whether it came before us or after us.
It was around there.
Yeah, it was about the same time. But you look at. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
No. I mean, I was going to say, like, first of all, how did you get involved with that film? Because I mean, it wasn't definitely not a guarantee blockbuster by any stretch of the imagination. But I guess there was something in the story that caught your eye.
Yeah, look, I wasn't looking for a guaranteed blockbuster. I guess that was the part of the key. I got an agent in Hollywood, and this is like, the many years between making music videos with my friends in a one-room office and this, of course. And through that interim, I'd made a lot of music videos, became very successful making music videos for some big acts, and also started doing a lot of commercials as well. And I got involved with a company called Propaganda Films in LA that got me out to LA, that produced a bunch of very well established directors now, whose names you would know. And I started making videos in LA, and through that I got agents at the time were very open to finding new talent from the fields of music video and commercials, and I nabbed an agent, which was CAA, which is one of the powerful, probably the most powerful one at that time, and they started sending me out to producers and meeting producers, and I got offers of films such as, and this is all on the strength of my commercials work, etc. I started getting offers of things like Nightmare on Elm Street number something, which I can't remember which number it was. I think it was 5 or 4 or something. And it's not really what I wanted to do. I mean, I've always had very specific, desires and tastes of what I wanted to do. And I love genre, but I like a particular kind of genre. I've never been a fan of plugging into franchises or sequels or remakes or anything like that. Because for me, the fun of it is building that world, creating that world. That's what I get off on, as we've cited 2001: A Space Odyssey transported me to another world. And so that's what I've always been hungry for, creating that world is what's so basically godlike and exciting in filmmaking. So plugging into someone's already existing world and characters and situations, I just can't get excited about it, I like stuff that comes out of my own imagination. So anyway, to cut a long story short, after I met all these producers, I spent like a month every day meeting producers where producers would ask you this basic question, which is always impossible to ask, and I'm sure they're asking it to this day of young filmmakers. They say, well, what sort of movies do you want to make? These are people who haven't seen any of your movies or you haven't made any movies yet, And of course, my answer to that, as it still is to this day, is good movies, right? I don't limit myself.
It's a good answer.
Anything other than that, or excellent movies. That's what I want to make, because I like all genres. I like all kinds of stories if they're good, So eventually, after getting sick of answering that question for about a month, I walked into Ed Pressman's office, who was the producer of The Crow, and he was refreshingly unique. He's a pretty eccentric guy, and really stood out after meeting all these very, kind of Hollywood cigar chomping types, whatever they were. They weren't really cigar chomping, but that's kind of the way I.
Oh no, I know exactly what you're talking about. Like that. Hey kid, all I need is a poster and a trailer, and I'll sell anything.
Yeah. Exactly. You met those guys too, I see. So and he had this thing called The Crow. He gave me a script and he gave me the comic book, and I didn't particularly care for the script. It was already a draft. But I liked the comic. I thought the comic was really intriguing, and I really enjoyed artwork, and I loved the central concept, and because it was coming from a very unique, original place, and I was in no had no illusions about the fact that I was kind of reinterpreting the comic book genre, which it was already, as you've pointed out, established mainly through Tim Burton's Batman movies. They were the most recent offerings in that world up until that stage. So I went, well, this is kind of like Batman, but it's kind of like anti-Batman, right? It's even to the point of what he's wearing, the costume he's wearing, that long black leather trench coat. Brandon up with this idea because I kept saying to him, this guy's got to have something like a cape. I want him to have something that moves around because it's going to be really cool in action scenes. If he's moving around, the cape's going to be great, but obviously we don't want a cape because that's not the character, and we want a sort of like an urban version of that, a contemporary urban version of that. And we came up with a sort of like full leather trench coat, which became a sort of iconic part of that genre ever, since that point on. But that's where it came from, and it was kind of like reinterpreting some of the Batman stuff, and just the city, it was like the city that it took place in was kind of like, a sort of a Gotham city, a noirish kind of gothic city, but it was kind of just completely fucked up and sort of falling apart, and just everything's broken down, nothing's working, and people set it on fire now and again, which again made it for me a contemporary kind of concept, So that was kind of it. It was trying to ground the comic book genre and bring it into a contemporary, milieu, like a contemporary sort of feel, which was very much against the sort of like fantasy kind of over the top fantasy environments of something like Batman, and my reaction to that. And also, like I guess Richard Donner's Superman and all those Superman movies which were very kind of light and frothy and kind of, a little cheesy at times, So I wanted to very much completely go against that. And even Tim's movies were very still had a tongue-in-cheek kind of, we can only do comic books with tongue-in-cheek kind of humor, because Tim's not like this, but to a certain extent it makes you feel like the filmmakers are not taking the medium seriously. So I wanted my movie to be like, serious, I wanted to, there's like drugs and stuff and, things that are kind of scary and dangerous and real world, So yeah, that was my response to what had gone before.
Yeah, and when you look at The Crow, which still is aged extremely well. I mean, extremely well. That I think you were right. I don't think the whole trench coat thing, which was so like it became a thing in so many sci-fi world building kind of films. I think Equilibrium, was one of them, and obviously The Matrix. There wasn't a movie before then that had these kind of trench coats in a sci-fi environment that I can remember. No. It was in this gothic dark.
We based it on Carlito's Way, actually.
Yeah,
because I'm a big 70s movie fan, right? And so actually we were looking at. I've done that. I also did that in iRobot with Will's wardrobe in iRobot. We were looking at 70s movies and how they dressed the characters in sort of like, hard-boiled crime type movies, So Pacino in Carlito's Way had a it wasn't full length. I mean, we came up with the full length because it was the cape thing, but I know for a fact that didn't exist as an idea in science fiction or fantasy, and it sure did exist afterwards. Matrix being the main one. But also, Blade was also another one that had that same. Everyone was doing it. So.
Afterwards it was. But I think you were right. I think The Crow was the first, and you were the first really dark, because Batman had Batman 1 and Returns had a dark, comic book feel. But you're right, that tongue in cheek was still there. But you were the first to really come up with a comic book adaptation that was dark. That's a dark film. A dark hero. The hero.
Yeah, Batman was dark light.
Yeah,
Batman was dark light, and The Crow was dark. So
right, exactly. And I think Nolan's Batman was much more in the realm of The Crow, meaning that it's because Dark Knight. It's a fairly dark, film as well.
Oh yeah, Chris has been very influenced by. Chris has told me he's been very influenced by both The Crow and Dark City. The Batman, Chris's Batman movies, and it's partly because David Goyer, who wasn't involved on The Crow, there's a weird, convoluted relationship there. David Goyer, who co-wrote Dark City with me, was involved with writing the Batman movies for Chris, and he was involved with writing The Crow 2. So he'd studied the original Crow, very intensely in order to write the script for the second Crow movie. And so, I was very amused to see literally lines of dialogue pop up in the Batman movies, in Chris's Batman movies, the verbatim, out of the original Crow, not out of David's Crow, out of my Crow, So that's funny, really. And yeah, Chris is, I was working with Chris I wasn't really working with him, but we were developing something together for a short time. They didn't work out, and he was, going on about how influential Dark City was in particular to what he's done over the years very successfully. Much more successfully than myself.
Chris is doing okay. He's doing just fine.
He's doing all right.
He's doing all right. Now, I remember buying the book, the white art. I think it was the art of book or the movie book of The Crow, and flipping through it, and there was this character in it that's not in the movie, which is the Skull Cowboy.
Oh, yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about what the legend of the Skull Cowboy and why it never made it? Because I know you shot footage of it, so why never it made it to the final movie?
Yeah, we shot him. Michael Berryman went through an incredible, elaborate makeup to portray this character. At the end of the day, I mean, obviously due to the tragedy on the Crow, there was a lot of stuff we didn't get to shoot. And when we went back to Wilmington to finish the movie, I had to kind of rewrite and restructure things in order to shoot the linking stuff, obviously without Brandon, to make it work somehow without him, and digital tech, a lot's been made out of the digital technology that we use to make it work, but it was very early days for that stuff.
Oh, I remember.
It was very very, very stuff you could do, you get away with it. I mean, it really ended up being, take Brandon out of one scene, rotoscope him out and put him into another. That's really the extent of the digital, expertise that we could bring to bear, So the Skull Cowboy partly, though we'd shot the scenes with Brandon, one of the scenes, there was another one that we hadn't actually filmed. It was just, how can I put this? It just didn't seem to play in the story. It seemed like the story worked fine without him, and because he was used less than we originally intended, and he needed a lot of VFX work to help him be more convincing than he was in the photography. I just, every time he'd pop up in the film when I was watching the edit, it felt like another movie. It just felt like something that was not the grounded kind of storytelling that I was trying to achieve. And so, we had to excise him. And, sadly, we just removed him and we looked at the edit and it seemed like the film didn't really suffer because his role was really kind of like an expositional one. Right. Where he would appear and tell Eric Draven the rules of what was to happen, and there was the important scene that I thought we couldn't live with is the moment when Eric is about to walk into the church at the end of the movie to save Sarah, the young girl, and the Skull Cowboy appeared on the steps and said, if you work for the living, you're here to work for the dead. If you work for the living, you will be vulnerable. You will lose your powers. But it seemed like, the audience felt that the crow itself was the source of Eric's power. And so when they shot the crow in the church, it felt like that was the moment when he lost his power. And then, and it was such a simple way of doing it rather than having a whole other character appear and tell us the rule book at that point in time.
Sometimes it's difficult to let go of those babies that are beautiful on their own, like the Skull Cowboy by itself as a character might be, but it might not work in the whole story, and that's where the big boy pants come on, and you got to go. Oh, that's got to go, even though we love it.
Exactly, it's a hard call to make. Usually, always is a hard call to make, but. You make that story where you make a different movie. One movie when you write it, and you make another movie when you shoot it, and you make another movie in edit, and you have to try. Objectivity for a director is the most important thing, and the tool that you lose most easily and most quickly as you get stressed and tired, and you struggle to make it all work through the production. It's very hard to retain that objectivity, but you've got to try and keep that because you need to be the audience as well as the filmmaker, and you need to be able to step back and go, is this really working? And if it's not, as you say, it needs to be, when in doubt, cut it out.
So you actually worked after The Crow. When it was released, it obviously was a fairly big hit. If I remember correctly, it did well at the box office, obviously spawned a few sequels as well. You decided to do some shorts right afterwards. Can you tell me a little bit about the series of shorts that you did afterwards?
Yeah, it's a series called Book of Dreams, and I'm kind of still doing them all these years later in a funny sort of way. Not calling them that anymore, but I like shorts. I like the short form. It's like an author who writes novels. It's great to write a short story now and again, and get directly to the font of imagination, in a short that can exist in a short story, where you don't have to explain everything, and it's just. So I started making these films based on people's dreams, and they weren't really. I was pretending they were based on dreams. They were just something I was coming up with, But the format is always someone who describes their dream on camera, and then you see it acted out, and a lot of them are kind of humorous, and you can kind of respond to what they're saying in a kind of visual, oddly, contradictory way visually. But they were fun, and I've made 3 of them that were called that up to date, and they became increasingly more expensive until I found myself on the set of a 10-minute black and white science fiction 1950 science fiction homage, which was costing me $300,000 of my own money, right? And that's when I went, this is just incredibly stupid what I'm doing. I've really got to get other people to pay for this stuff, But look, it was they were great fun to do, and it was a part of my kind of recovering from the horrific experience of The Crow and seeing a friend die. Yeah. So it was a way to reignite my love for being on the set and making films. So I think it paid for itself.
Yeah, and there's, when you're saying that, you're like, and then I find myself on a set for $300,000. It's like, it comes to me like I'm thinking to myself, because you're mad, because we're all mad. If you're a filmmaker, there's a spark of madness that there's no logic to. And it's so refreshing to hear that even directors like yourself still have this madness in them. It hasn't been. No,
we wouldn't be doing, we are eternally naive children, right? And we have to be to do what we do. And you never grow up. If you grow up, you'd probably stop doing it because it's a mug's game from a financial point of view. That's the only thing that explains things like Francis Coppola making a now. There is no other explanation for why someone a filmmaker would put themselves through that with their own financing and under such arduous circumstances, except for this absolute unexplainable, inexplicable love for this thing that we do, But yeah, we're most of us are dumber than the marketing or the branding, sir. It was so funny because I just had James V. Hart on, who wrote Dracula, and I was talking to him and Coppola called up one night to James and said, James, I hate you. I hate the script. I hate the movie. I hate the actors. I hate you even more because you wrote this damn thing and got me involved in this. Come out here and see this rough cut. It is garbage. And I'm like, and he goes on to the deeper story, but the genius of that is that if Francis Ford Coppola is having issues with a cut, at that stage in his career, what hope is there for any of us at that point? Like there is no hope. No matter how big it doesn't surprise me at all. Look, and that's also to do with the fact that the reason it's such a wonderful medium is because you're always learning. You never stop learning. Every film you make, doesn't matter how many movies you make, you're going to keep learning, getting better and better at it and stuff. It doesn't mean the films will always be better, but because there's so many unknowables that go into making a movie. But certainly your craft as a director becomes better, and your ability to kind of navigate the whole process becomes improved, But I think that's the thing is like you just, you're always going to doubt yourself. That's why it's so destructive when you end up with a studio that's doing all the doubting, which might be a good segue to go into iRobot. I don't know.
Well, no, because I want
to do anyways. Filmmakers.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on Dark City before we get to iRobot.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Because you forgot about that little movie called Dark City.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Dark City was one of those films that has become a cult classic because I remember when it came out, if I remember correctly, please remind me, it wasn't a runaway hit, but it was.
Oh no, not at all.
Not at all, right? It'd be like people didn't know what to do with it, like and it was well beyond its heyday, but it is so visual and so beautifully crafted, and up to that point, I mean, I can't remember other than maybe The Crow of something being so viscerally visual in its storytelling technique. I mean, you look at Dark City, there is a direct line to The Matrix. Like I'm not saying that they took anything, but I'm just saying that there's definitely inspiration picked up from Dark City. I mean, you could just see the through line so clearly. Yeah. And that was New Line. So that was Warner's, at the time. And, how does like a movie like that obviously would never get greenlit today. The Crow would have a tough time getting greenlit today.
Oh yeah, The Crow would have a slightly easier time because it's based on something,
IP, right?
An original like that, it would be really hard to make. Very very hard to make.
What was the budget, by the way? What was the budget of Dark City, if you mind me asking?
It was like 25 million or something at the time, which was even at the time was not much. It should have been probably at least 75 million. For what we were trying to do in the film. I remember just the visual effects budget itself was $1 million, which sounds like an Austin Powers movie.
Is that all it was? It was only $1 million?
That was it. $1 million was the entire budget, the VFX budget, because we built a lot of it too, a lot of the sets and stuff, and barely managed to. Well, we shot as much as we could, and we basically they shut us down because we just ran out of days. And they had to give us some extra money, like another $1 million or something to bring the actors back and finish it. I remember New Line basically said, that's it. I was saying, but I'm not done. And they go, well, show us the cut, come over and show us the cut and we'll decide whether you're done or not, And I showed it to them and they said, well, it doesn't make any sense. There's bits of it are missing. I go, well, there's a reason for that.
We're not done.
So anyway, they eventually gave me some more money to finish the bits that were missing. And but yeah, it was a low budget movie. There's no question. It was harder. What we were doing in that for roughly double the budget of The Crow, but what we were trying to do was actually much harder than that,
Yeah, I mean, look, I remember. Well, you built a lot of you did a lot of modeling in The Crow, if I remember correctly, too, right? You did models of the city, and that's why that has such an amazing, because that was all pre-CG worlds. Correct, really, I think Jurassic Park had just hit, so
yeah. Exactly.
That whole world it was just starting to come up. So you did a lot of practice, and I know you did a lot of practicals on Dark City as well. Anyone listening who has not seen Dark City, do yourself a favor and watch it, because you'll see it and go, oh my God, there's so many movies I've taken from this. It's kind of like you watch The Matrix and they're like, oh, everyone's stolen from The Matrix. Like, oh, it seems passé, but The Matrix was leading one of those films that kind of just, blew the doors open on a lot of stuff. And so many people just took it. I mean, bullet time, Jesus Christ.
Yeah. But, The Matrix didn't invent bullet time. Bullet time was invented on commercials.
Right, on The Gap.
And just to take a little bit away from The Matrix for a moment. And
they have enough.
Where I went terribly wrong in Dark Cities, I should have had some more kung fu in it. I think I would have been probably more successful.
If you would have had more kung fu, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's all related. Dark City was definitely an influence, though, as you rightly pointed out, it was a disaster at the box office. It was partly a disaster because it took us. They kept putting it off. The release originally was to be released maybe a year before it came out, and they went. They said, "Oh, there's this film called The Titanic coming out, and it looks like it's going to do okay. So I think originally we were going to open on the opening weekend of The Titanic, and they went, let's put it off a couple of months, right?" And then The Titanic came out, and of course we know about The Titanic, and it kept building and getting bigger and bigger and building, and they kept saying, "Oh, we'll put it off another couple of months again," and eventually it ended up being like, as I say, I think it was 8 or 9 months later than the original release.
Oh, wow.
When the film was eventually released, because they were just staying away from the Titanic. They had no idea how long they'd have to wait to stay away from the Titanic,
Yeah.
So yeah, that was kind of amusing. But it's also, the film was not it was not really promoted very well because the studio themselves didn't really get it.
Sure.
No one got it. No one got the film. It was even like the trailer that came out was I think it was a good trailer. I liked the trailer. It was very creatively done, but didn't really tell you anything about the story.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a bunch of images, and so people were kind of, if you don't tell them something about a story, it doesn't matter how pretty the pictures are, they're just not going to go and see it.
Can you remind me? There's a French director who did a movie, and it reminds me a lot of Dark City. He eventually did Alien Resurrection. They brought him over to do Children. Is it?
Oh yeah.
What's his name?
Yeah, that's
what was the movie?
I'm blanking on his name,
but the movie Children
called City of Lost Children.
That was it.
City of the Lost Children.
Such a
beautiful film, absolutely gorgeous imagery. Came for Dark City, but Dark City was really conceptually very different.
Oh, completely.
That film, there's some visual similarities. Yeah, I mean, my film was more about, we were kind of riffing on Metropolis, Fritz Lang's Metropolis.
Oh, without question.
And Akira. Akira to a certain extent. So that's kind of more my influence.
Would you ever make Akira if they offered it to you?
I'm not a huge fan of. I mean, I love Akira. I love the comic and I love the movie. But I'm not a huge fan of remaking stuff because I kind of go, well, I mean,
it's been done.
It's been done. It's been done really well, and so why would a Hollywood version, particularly in our current climate, do it better? I just don't. I don't think it's possible. I mean, look at what happened to Ghost in the Shell. That's a classic example.
Yeah.
You just can't. This stuff can't be done. Can't be overly refined, to put it nicely. Mm-hmm. Overly developed. You have to go with the raw ingredients that you've got to work with. And I don't think there's anyone in Hollywood now who would finance such a version of any of this stuff. I just don't think it's possible.
So after Dark City, which is obviously did not do well at the box office for the reasons we spoke about, but yet still very well respected for the craft and the film. I know. I mean, and you please tell me if I'm wrong. I know a lot of other filmmakers respect it and were influenced by it. How did the town treat you after, having essentially a box office disappointment? And how long did it take you to get out of that? Because I always am fascinated with, you hear these stories of directors who get
gotten out of it.
Well, you've made a few movies since then, so obviously someone gave you.
I have made a few. Yeah,
you've made a couple.
Like made more.
But just out of curiosity, like how does the town treat you? Because I know after a big hit they treat you one way, and after a disappointment they treat you another way. I'm just curious, and I know obviously it's a different time period too. I was in the 90s, but just curious.
Yeah, a different mentality where people were willing to take chances, but only to a certain extent, And the only reason they took a chance on Dark City is because The Crow had been so successful. That's really how it works, You make one hit and theoretically you get the license to do something that pushes the envelope a little bit. Though I'd argue these days that's less and less likely because these days Hollywood have determined that original fantasy and science fiction just doesn't work commercially speaking. And sadly, to a certain extent, when it comes to big budgets and the cinema release, the big screen release, they are probably right. It's sad that we're in that place, and it's sad that I think the superhero movies have put us in that place with the audiences. But there you go. That's it is what it is. So yes, you're absolutely right. I was courted after The Crow, and everyone was all the studios were calling me saying, we'll make anything that you want. And I had this thing. I already written Dark City. I'd actually written Dark City before The Crow, and I said, "Here's this script, and this is what I want to do." And they usually say, "Well, what else do you want to do?" You know. So I eventually found people and we went through quite a development process through various studios. You know, Disney were on board at one stage, and believe it or not, and then we ended up in we ended up in New Line, and you know, they were like, it was all about the casting, and Mike DeLuca and Bob Shea at New Line were like, "We don't care what the casting is, you can have whoever you like as long as you support them with some names," you know. So I got to cast Rufus Sewell, which was terrific because that's who I wanted to be in the film. And then after the film, of course, being such a disappointment, you know, it was very hard to make the next one, you know. So I went back to Sydney and made this film called Garage Days, a very low budget Aussie movie. I've got to say though that the Dark City has built a huge following over the years. I mean, it's often to rival The Crow as well. And it's you know, the increasing rate of offers to do sequels or you know, the big one is right now, because cinema is in such a poor state, is to do a TV version of like a series version of Dark City, which I've turned down several over the years, but more and more I'm thinking maybe that's a good idea, you know. So that's quite a turnaround from a film that did bad box office. It's quite it's a great thing about. I mean, look, I have, you know, physical media to thank for that, as we all do, which allows a film to have a shelf life. It's not just about its opening weekend. And if you make particular kinds of films that are challenging, not the sort of the norm, the sort of slam dunk, then physical media has traditionally been a great support of that kind of long process of success process, you know. And Dark City is a classic example of that, you know. So many people over the years more people discover it, you know, and it builds its fan base. You know?
Well, I'll be first in line to see the Dark City series, so let us know when it's available. Because, and I think honestly, a series and if I may be so bold to say, a series with someone in your hands, you might have the budget and the freedom, especially with certain streaming services, to do what you want to do with hopefully not as much interference, because I feel that, and we'll get into iRobot in a second, which kind of leads into that. I've always felt since I started following your work is that, like, you are obviously a very unique filmmaker. You have a very specific vision, the specific stories you like to tell, but a lot of times they just don't leave you alone. And because of that, but they just don't leave you alone. Like, you know, like Tim, I equate someone like Tim Burton, who has a very unique style that's very him. And, you know, he built up a lot of credibility after Beetlejuice and then Batman. And then he started to be able to do his thing, and they left him alone for the most part. But you never got really left alone. Like, I would love to see you with a $200 million film where they walk away with an original concept and you just let the man do what he does.
I'd like to see me with that. I'd like to see me with that too. Just FYI.
Just for clarity, if anyone's listening with 200 million hot in their pocket, Alex would love. But I always felt that. I'm like, my God.
Thank you for putting that message out too.
I'm putting it out there. You'll take 175. Yeah. I think we can work with 175.
That's fine too. Hell, I'd take a lot less if they left me alone. I'd take way less than that, you know. So.
But you're one of those artists, one of those filmmakers that you just need to tell your story and trust that you're going to go where you are. And with The Crow, did you have a fair good amount of creative control over that?
Yeah, I mean, look, I was very lucky to a certain point, which is why I was so blindsided when I did iRobot. They left me alone on everything, and you know, this came out of a career of commercials, where I'd achieved success in advertising and music videos, where they also left me alone. So, hell, I just thought that's what a director got. I thought they just give you this film, and sometimes they don't give you a good enough budget, but they just bugger off and let you do your thing, and I'd made 4 features. Four. I'd made 4 features under those auspices, and before I'd made iRobot, and so suddenly I was in with the big boys, right? Suddenly I had a huge budget, which
big
is
movie star.
It's definitely a double-edged sword, you get all these great toys to play with and stuff, but then I and I also had the misfortune, I think, of working with one of the worst studio regimes at the time in terms of micromanagement, right? And so suddenly I had multiple people from the studio breathing down my neck at every stage. And actually, the weirdest thing is they cost the production money, because I want to move ahead with a certain thing, like building a car, for example, for the hero to drive in. We were designing and wanting to build a car, and they're basically just holding us back to the point where it just became so expensive and actually became impossible. And then we had to go elsewhere to get this car made in time, just stuff like that. And I just found that just utterly infuriating, that I was having to I was being constantly challenged creatively and having to constantly challenge the studio on a budgetary level, actually to save the film money, which I just thought was just absolutely insane, because I'm a very responsible guy. I'm a working class guy. I grew up in a pretty poor situation, and and working class in Australia means kind of poverty line almost, So I'm not. I take money very seriously. I don't waste it, and I like to make sure that it all ends up on the screen, whatever amount of money I've got, So having a studio that were taking these stupid decisions that would cost the production money, I just got, I saw it as a personal affront. I'm going, well, this is more money that my movie has to make for these guys in order to be proved a success, But yeah, it was a whole different world, and it was definitely not a good experience on any level. So I warn people that it is a dangerous double-edged sword. It's a very ego gratifying. You have all the big toys, but you get your hands get. I described it as you're running a marathon, which is what you do on any movie, big or small budget. But in this case, the marathon is all the studio execs line up on either side of the road, and they throw chairs under you as you're running.
Wow.
That's kind of the additional part of a big budget movie, and because it is about, you're right. I have a specific vision and a specific way of doing things, and that's what I like to do. And I like to make movies that couldn't be done by anyone other than me. And it's not ego, because I just happen to see things in a certain way, and I want to do things that feel unique. So often I'll avoid a particular storyline or a plot or a this or a that or a visual, because I've seen it done by other people, and I'll try and do it in a different way, a unique way. So it's sort of an experimental approach, but it gets more refined as I know more through the years. But that to me is kind of what I bring to the show. So when they're second guessing me and telling me to do my job, I feel like, well, why am I even here? What is it? Why do you want me to do it? Surely you want someone who's more bendable to your will as a studio executive, who will give you exactly what others can give you, or exactly what you want, which is even a more funding concept, because often they don't know what they want, and that's partly why I haven't done a lot of, after iRobot, I didn't do a lot of, I haven't done any big Hollywood studio movies. Gods of Egypt was a big budget movie, but it was a huge indie movie. That's the way they put the financing together. But again, even that was, from a creative point of view, was really arduous, and it became clear to me that beyond a certain budget is not a playground that I should be playing in, really, because it's an absolute kind of correlation between how high the budget is and how much fear that the studio executives have. And fear is not a good way to create. It really isn't, you know. You don't want fear. You've got to be fearless in the way you create. The best acting comes out of fearlessness, out of being brave and doing and going where you feel creatively is necessary. And it's the same with a director, with a filmmaker. Is you've got to be brave, you know, and you can't be brave when every other fucker on the boat around you is like, we're going to drown, you know. You can't, you know. Eventually, your bravery gets whittled down if you're the only guy saying, you know, no, we'll make it. We're going to be okay, guys. We're going to make it, you know. So anyway, that's as I can describe. You know.
So, I mean, you were working with one of the biggest movie stars of the world at the time, Will Smith, as well. And was it fun working with Will?
Yeah, Will's an absolute wonderful person, and we had a great time, you know. And honestly, if Will hadn't been on that film, and I'd had someone who was less enjoyable to be making a film with, I may have actually walked off that film. That's how far they pushed me during the production. But Will made, you know, would often make my day, and to the point where he'd make me laugh so much sometimes I'd have to say, just please stop, Will, because I can't focus on the you know, video screen. He's terrific, you know.
Yeah, and I forgot the actor who played the robot. Oh God, what was his name? He was in
Alan Tudyk.
Oh my God, what an amazing performance! I think that was the first time people were starting to have a conversation about nominating actors for their performances.
Alan's great, you know. Yeah, he's done a few other robots, I think, since.
No, he's
he turned up as
some mocap
robot for something.
He's done some mocap. Yeah, look,
this was very early days. I mean, Gollum had been around for one movie, early Gollum. But it was also early days for this kind of performance capture technology, and it was kind of I have an amusing story to tell about Alan. We were this is after the shoot. We were working out of Digital Domain that's in Venice in Los Angeles, and I'd be working with them as they're animating Alan's character Sonny, and I would go for a walk down at the beach occasionally just to get some fresh air and get out of a dark room, which is what you spend your life in, you know. And I bump into Alan, and turns out Alan lives down there, you know, and I go, hey, come and have a look at what we're doing, you know, come and have a look at this incredible footage that we're making with your character. And he was really excited. He came along, and we walked into the theater there at Digital Domain and sit down next to each other, and they start running shots from the film, the fully realized robot. Alan's like, this is amazing. It looks fucking amazing. It's great, whatever. And so then he's still there when we then go into the next part of our what we're doing, which is where I guide the animators in terms of recreating Alan's performance to the CG animation. And in those days, this is before we had facial capture, actually kind of keyframe animation. The way they did that is they'd look at Alan's performance that we filmed, and then they'd reproduce it with the Sonny robot, right? So what that meant is they would put it up on the big screen. One side would be a bit like our podcast right now. One side is Alan, and the other side is the crude version of the robot that they're animating in the middle of animation. And we'd literally look at every frame, and they'd show me the shot, and I'd go, great, or I'd go, you know what, on frame 13, I think he raises his eyebrow just a tiny bit more, and there's a little twitch in his nose, gives a little bit of vulnerability or whatever, and we look at it over and over again, and they go, and the animation director goes, you're right, there is a twitch in his left nostril for about 3 frames from frame 13 to frame 16. And after we're doing this for like about 10 minutes, Alan taps me on the shoulder and says, I've got got to go. I go, oh, yeah, okay, well, thanks for coming. He goes, yeah, I'm sorry I got to go, but this is insane. I'm going nuts. This is going to destroy my acting for all time. The fact that someone is sitting here, all these guys are sitting here looking at my performance like a frame at a time and studying my nostril. I just can't take it. I'm sorry I'm here, So I think I ruined Alan's acting forevermore.
I mean, it's true, but it's true. I mean, actors are, are actors. And if you're telling them, they're like, oh, we're going to analyze every frame of your nostril before a shot, forget it. They'll never be able to get up. Like, it's just tough enough to be an actor, let alone being that kind of scrutiny. Exactly. That's amazing. Yeah. So, again, we discussed that dream of working in Hollywood, making these big giant monster films. I think we talked a little bit about it, but are there any other misconceptions about working on such large projects? Is it just a loss of control? Because as that budget goes up, and there's very few directors, even some of the biggest directors in Hollywood have had issues, from Spielberg to Fincher. I mean, they all have, of course, yeah. They all have.
Well, they don't like. I mean, part of the biggest problem right now is they don't want to work with guys like us,
right?
Because I'm talking about most of the movies that get done. I'm not talking about Chris Nolan and people like that who they've sanctioned and can spend big budgets on original ideas. They're such rarities now, really. And particularly in the sort of science fiction domain, it's. They don't want to work with. I think they want to work with people who are. I call them puppet masters, right? I call these producers people like the Marvel guys and whatever. I call them puppet masters, and there's a lot of sort of media coverage of the fact that they'll bring in a director, but they won't let the director do shoot the action scenes, for example. And I'm like, what the fuck's that all about? I mean, it's like. Because they've worked out their formula. When you do a Marvel movie, it's like you're a TV director doing an episode of a series, right? They've worked it all out, and it's one of the reasons I haven't done episodic TV, because you walk onto the set, the actors know what they're doing, they know the characters, they got the costumes worked out, they got everything worked out. Oh, and someone's going to shoot the action sequences for you, and we've already pre-vised them and worked out all the shots. So you go, well, what is it that a director is actually doing? The script's written, you can't change a word. So it's like, why are you there? What is it that you're actually providing in that situation as a director? So I kind of go, well, they're right to work. The producers are right to work with people that they can plug into that machine, who have who have some kind of progress they want to make in their careers, to allow them to do such a big, ego gratifying projects, to make $150 zillion, so that then they can maybe go and do something that they really want to do, that they really love, So, I mean, I think from a career point of view, that makes sense. Unfortunately, I've already been through all that. So all I really care about these days is, I'm not particularly driven by finance. There's really an amount of money they could offer me to do something like that, really. And as I say, I'm just not the right person to do that sort of stuff. I would rather just sit at home and write and work out how I am going to make my films that I really, really care about. Or if there's a great script that's in the range where I know they're going to let me do what I do. I'd have much greater job satisfaction from that sort of stuff.
Now, what advice would you give directors about directing actors on set? Because you've worked with some great actors. Any advice on directing and how you direct actors?
That's a very hard question to answer, because it really depends on where you're at in your career, okay. And where and who the actors are. I mean, every actor is different. There is variable as every individual. A lot of people ask me about storyboarding, and it's the same answer, which is, I know how I work with storyboarding, but I can't give, new filmmakers that advice, because it's not what will work for them, So yeah, it's hard to say. I think the only nutshell thing I could offer is as I say, every actor is different. Every actor has different requirements in order to achieve what they do, to get the best out of them. What I've learned over the years is try and find what it is that they need, and try and give them what they need, the circumstances that they need, and only so much. I think the one danger that maybe new directors have, or the one cautionary note I'd give them is, don't over direct an actor. Don't feel like it's your job to sit there and specify every detail and give them line readings or whatever you might be inspired to do. If you're a writer, you might be inspired to want them to say the words, etc. If you're having to do that, you've picked the wrong actor, because the key really is to find the right actor for your role, for the role, and then let them work their magic. As studios interfere with directors' vision and the frustrations that I've expressed from that, I'm sure actors experience the same thing from directors, and so don't overdo it, I've had situations in the past working with less experienced actors where they come up to me and they say, one chap in particular said, why don't you ever say anything to me? Why don't you give me any sort of direction or whatever? And I go, well, it's because I like what you're doing, right? And so I don't want to fuck up what you're doing. So that's why I want you to if I start saying stuff to you, it's because I'm not happy with where it's going. But I'm really happy. You're doing a great job. Just keep doing your great job, And that's a example of, I cast the right person for the role. They did exactly what I was hoping they would do, and they keep doing it well. And then it's, you temper certain moments, you tweak certain scenes, you give them one little bit of direction and have them look at, do it in a slightly different way if you don't like it. But really, the rest of it's there's no trick to it. There's no. It's kind of just let the magic happen, and if it's working, don't touch it, leave it,
What is and do you rehearse? Do you do rehearsal?
I do. Yes, I do. Look, for me, the most important part of the actor-director process is what happens before you come onto the set, which is through I like to have at least 3 weeks with the actors before we start shooting. And what we'll traditionally do is start with a table read, move very quickly onto discussing character, discussing scenes, breaking down scenes, et cetera, and we'll do that half a day in the morning usually, and then the rest of the day, the wardrobe, makeup, hair, everyone else has them for whatever they're doing. But I think that's the most important part for me, and that's often it's not so much about actually acting it out as about discussing in incredible detail backstory and building those characters so that we come out of that process with them, the actors, each actor owning their character, understanding that character, even if it's something that I've written, understanding the character better than I do, or at least as well as I do. And that's when I start to trust them. We build mutual trust. I start to trust their opinion and their view of things. And sometimes I'll realign my view a little bit. But it all comes through that process, that early and it's more about discussion, than anything else. And if there's lines that don't gel, eventually when they say to me, I don't think my character would say that, which I'm very happy to hear from an actor, and I hear it often because I encourage that sort of collaborative spirit. Mm-hmm. We'll change it. We'll change the line, and if they can explain to me why their character wouldn't say it, I won't just do it willy-nilly. But and that to me that's the creative process. That's a collaboration where you bounce between actor and director. The reason I like working with people like Will Smith so much and Nicolas Cage also is that they're fully storytellers. They're not just acting their character. They're aware that they are integral to telling your story or telling the story, and that's why I love both of those guys so much, because they really bring that quality to their work, and I'm sure with other directors as well.
And you worked on the film obviously called The Knowing with Nick Cage. How is it to work with Nicolas? Because he has obviously become almost a cultural icon in the performances that he puts out sometimes. Yeah. I mean, he is I absolutely love, Wild at Heart. And so many Raising Arizona, all these amazing performances over the years. How is it to work with? Like, he seems like, I'm sure it's not, but I think he's like a lightning in a bottle. And you're just kind of trying to aim in and direct him in a proper way.
I describe him as the Ferrari of actors, where actors have 4 gears, he's got 6, and he can go there if you need him to. Speaking of being brave, this is the thing about Nick and why he is such a iconic guy. He's incredibly brave, and to him, paramount to the film is a great story, and it's not about him looking a certain way or acting in a certain way so that the audience like him. Or any of those considerations that big movie star people make, he will go where the story dictates, and he'll go way into where the story dictates. I say he's completely brave and fearless with what he's doing, and that's pretty much a unique thing with actors of his stature. So he's a wonderful combination of old-fashioned character actor with movie star feel, they don't make him like Nick anymore, and that's why he's great to work with. And on top of that, he's Nick as a guy he's a surrealist. He has a really brilliant mind. He's really funny, and he's totally aware of all this stuff that everyone's kind of been going on about with his over the top crazy performances. But he's trying to push the envelope into different areas to keep himself fresh, and it's kind of exactly what I do with films. Like after Dark City, I made this thing, Garage Days, this low-budget Aussie comedy, romantic comedy. And go figure, the guy who made The Crow and Dark City would make a romantic comedy, And I did that for a very specific reason, because I want to keep exploring and pushing into new areas, and I don't want to feel secure. I know how to do this. I want to feel nervous and excited about the experimenting and coming up with new stuff. And that's very much the way Nick approaches his performances. He's a very brave explorer of new frontiers. So it's about the best thing I could say about any actor, really, that I've worked with.
Now, what do you wish someone would have told you when you started out in the business that you didn't know now, or that you didn't know when you started?
Don't go there. No. I
run away. Yeah. What are you doing? Get a real job.
Yeah, run away. Yeah. No, well, as we pointed out, that's impossible to say to any filmmaker, and it's impossible to say to certainly any young filmmaker. Because when we're young, we don't even believe we're going to die. We're immortals, right?
Right.
It's look, it's one of the things I just don't know that you can ever really, and as I say, you're constantly learning, so you never really completely work it out. I don't think anyone does. And you've got to kind of go through it to go, oh, okay, now I understand. Now I understand what some of those other filmmakers, experienced filmmakers, said what they did. I try not to discourage people, because that's the worst thing you can do. I think it's really important that we retain, excitement for this craft, this thing that we do, making movies. And my excitement came from, as I say, the big screen, the big sound, and that immersive social experience of going to movies. And it's incredibly depressing that we're looking at the sort of, maybe looking at the end of that. And it's something that I try not to think about too much, because it just does spiral me into utter depression. But look, I'm not answering your question just because I don't know that I can. I think all you can do is say, be true to your own self, be true to your own originality, right? Tell a story that you feel really, really passionate about, and stick to that like crazy. Don't let anyone talk you out of it. If you want to make a particular film, particular story, don't let anyone talk you out of it. Just do it, because the fact is everyone's going to try and talk you out of it. You're going to get knocked back by every single person. I mean, look at Star Wars as a classic example of that. Oh, my God. Every studio knocked George Lucas back, and he finally managed to convince one last person to make the film. So that's how fucking wrong these people are. And they continue, and today they're more wrong than ever before. They have no idea. They wouldn't have an idea of a good script if it fell over on them, if they fell over it. You've got to just stay true to what you believe as an individual is a story that you are passionate about telling, I've got this thing called A New Country that I'm trying to make. I've been trying to finance it now for a couple of years, and it's again it's a very bold science fiction piece, a genre bashing blending thing that I've not seen anyone do before, and that's why I'm excited about making it. And I just I have to convince others of that, which is the eternal struggle that filmmakers have, So that's the thing, is like you got to be thick-skinned, and you got to be tough, and you got to just you got to have a real belief in your own vision. That's the most important thing.
And again, if would 175 million work for that movie? I mean, if it does, we'll put the word out and see if we can see if we get that crowdfunded for you.
I do that 150.
Okay, you're going to bring it down. I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Now, can you tell me about the Heretic Foundation?
It's a studio that I've built in Sydney, which is it's ostensibly a virtual production studio, but it's basically an umbrella for all aspects of the production. So we edit, we do all the VFX, we shoot it with using Unreal Engine, and it's basically a way to make an entire film. It also brings down the logistics and the budget exponentially. I can work with small crews, but I can put them into environments and situations that are I don't reduce the scope of. That the scope is bigger than ever before. So, for example, we've done this little short film, 20-minute film, which we're finishing up, which we're hoping will be released in January of next year, which is rapidly approaching. There's a trailer for it. It's called Mask of the Evil Apparition. There's a trailer on YouTube at the moment. And it's all been done virtually, and people are saying it looks like Dark City, and there's a reason for that, because it's kind of partly intentional. I think a lot of it is as the imagery is as intricate as Dark City, but Dark City we built real sets, and with this we're creating computer generated sets. But I think visually it looks, to my eye, looks very, very similar. So and it's a fraction of the budget that we spent on.
So this is the same. This is the same technology that Mandalorian's using.
It's the same technology. It's our Aussie stripped down indie version, because obviously Mandalorian has all the big pockets and the big bucks behind it. We have basically what's in my bank account behind it, which is not very much these days, I can tell you. So yeah, we've rebuilt that kind of concept, but in a indie style, and that was kind of the intention when we went into this. Is I went, what this if you get this, this short film we shot. It's a 20-minute film. We shot it in a week, right? Now I couldn't shoot 20 minutes of film in less than a month on the big budgets, probably about a month, just because it's an exponential process. The more crew you have, the more support crew you need, the longer it takes to do everything, right? So in this one, I was shooting as quickly as I would have shot on a short film or in film school. We had great fun doing it. We worked reasonable hours, almost 9 to 5 hours. We weren't working a lot of overtime, and we got 20 minutes of footage done. I think very good footage. There's one sequence where we have cloned a guy, an actor, 100 times. He plays 100 versions of himself in the one scene, which we shot in. We shot the whole scene in 3 hours. We did a similar scene like that in Gods of Egypt with a character, and one of the scenes sadly didn't even make it into the finished film. We were shooting for 5 days just on that one scene.
Jesus.
So that shows you how much faster you can work with this technology. You could shoot one environment in the morning, have lunch, and go, okay, now we're going to the mountaintop, and press a button on the computer, and suddenly you're in another location. You don't have to drive the unit across town, So this is the way forward. This means that we can compete as indie filmmakers. We can make films of a very high visual standard, compete with the big boys, but do it, and do it at a budget, and this all works in with, streaming and everything else to sort of like reclaim our industry back, reclaim our craft, our art back, so that we can do it. I've always been jealous for all my career of writers and painters and composers who can wake up one morning, go down to the piano in their lounge room and knock out a song, or write the next chapter of their book or whatever. And I'm like, why can't we as artists be like those guys? Well, because other people have to anoint us and give us the money to do it. Well, I think Heretic Foundation, my studio, is a small cog in turning that around, as the technology has been, as what you're doing is. It's all part of the same puzzle, that, the technology, for example, is allowing us to shoot films. Again, if I want to make a film in the morning, I can make it. It's not going to be a Marvel superhero movie, but it's going to be a film. So that to me is the exciting world that we're in right now. And if we can break that one extra little piece of the puzzle of how to monetize the stuff effectively, the content effectively, get it out to the audience, then to me it's a brave world that I certainly want to be a part of. That's for sure.
Now, and you also have a YouTube channel called Mystery Clock Cinema, which is so much fun. And I recommend everybody going to that channel. It doesn't only have your short films, but it also has some master classes by you. I love that video, what the bad habits that film school taught me, things like that. A lot of directors of your stature don't give back, don't want to help filmmakers. Not that they don't want to, but they just don't want, they just not, they don't do it as much. And I'm so glad that someone with your experience and your artistic design and your abilities are making an effort to give back to the filmmaking community. And I just love that you're doing that. How did the Mystery Clock Cinema come about, and why did you start it?
Well, Mystery Clock's my production company that's made some of the and I started looking at stuff on YouTube and going, what, I could do this stuff, and it's great fun. I mean, there's also there's a diabolical agenda behind it, of course, which is I'm trying to, as you're doing in a much more successful way than I'm doing it at a much level, but I'm trying to realign things into that new world that brave new world that I was talking about. And I feel like it's important for people to hear people like me who've come out of the old world and now embracing this new way of doing stuff. I think that hopefully is an inspiring thing, and hopefully that can realign a lot of new talent that is going to help build this new world. So I'm still doing it for my own selfish reasons, really. But also, I really enjoy talking to people. I've done a lot of, live masterclasses before we weren't allowed to congregate in groups this year. But up until that point, I was doing a lot of live ones, and going to film school and teaching there and stuff. And I just really enjoy it. I love the energy that young filmmakers bring to this, and often they end up teaching you more than you teach them. If only just to reacquaint yourself with the enthusiasm and the excitement and the energy that filmmakers can bring to this craft.
I mean, I remember my first day in film school. I still remember it to this day when they were touring around the studios and the back lot and stuff like that where I went. And I just remember that enthusiasm that I could just do anything, and there was no bounds. And that's something that obviously the business starts to squash little by little. And it's about you trying to fight your way back out of that to be able to still hold on to that flame. But, now both you and I are covered in shrapnel, from the years of being in the business. Obviously I'm
still pulling it out.
Oh no, you've got much, much more shrapnel than I do, sir. But inside you, the key is to hold on to that flame and to hold on to that love of why you started this journey, this insane business. If it's just it's insanity. But I'm so glad that you're doing that as well. Now I'm going to just ask you a few questions I ask all my guests. What advice would you give a filmmaker trying to get into the business today?
I think, as I said before, do your own thing, and stick to that thing, what you love, find those stories that those, what kind of movie do you want to tell, and stay true to that, and really try and focus on that, and don't be sort of sidetracked into other areas. I have this pet peeve about people young filmmakers who try and do proof of concept type movies to get a gig with a superhero franchise, and I feel like that's really limiting. I mean, look, there are some people that's all they want to do, then best of luck to them. But all you want to do, then maybe you're better off servicing your own original vision and showing people what it is that you can bring to even to get a franchise movie. I think those producers will surely appreciate that much more than seeing someone cloning something that they do and doing it for, on a much lower budget and not doing it as well. Surely that would be a more, so make sure you put your resources into something you can do well and pull off well, rather than something that's going to be half-hearted. Because if anything, that's going to just show people that maybe you can't do something that you're trying to show them that you can do. But the most important thing is staying true to your own vision. I feel like as a director, I think great writer directors are rare, and even though they may have one success, maybe they won't continue to have successes. So you don't always have to be a writer as a filmmaker. You don't have to be a writer director to be an auteur filmmaker. But I feel like to be an auteur filmmaker, to be someone who has a vision, who has a style, who has something unique that they're trying to bring, that's what it means to me. It doesn't mean that you try and do everyone's job on the set. Because particularly if you're new, you need to listen to other people's opinion. You need to value other people's opinions, particularly if they're more experienced than you. But I think try and find what it is that makes you new, makes you fresh, makes you original and unique, and try and stick to that while people are telling you that sucks, All right. I think that's really important.
And what is the lesson that took you the longest to learn, whether in the film business or in life?
Life. I'm not going to go into that. Let's stick to the film business. I think I touched upon it early on, which is storyboarding, which is, it took me a long time to, when I first started, I would do very elaborate storyboards, shot descriptions, or actually, drawings of, every shot I wanted in a scene. And often I'd written the script as well. So I was very specific with where I wanted the actors to stand and what line I wanted them to turn around on and all that sort of stuff, because I thought that's what being a director was, sort of controlling the entire process. And I'd read a lot about my heroes like Kubrick, and a lot of it's mythology too, because Kubrick is a far better director than some of this mythology might allude to, which is he does 150 takes of someone walking down a corridor or whatever. If he does that, he's doing it for a reason, which hasn't been properly explained. But and also Hitchcock, which there's mythology about Hitchcock, which is another filmmaker that I really admired, where he said once I've storyboarded the movie, written the script, storyboarded the movie's done. Then I just get the actors to do,
I don't even look through the camera. I don't even look through the camera.
Yeah. Which is just it's a complete myth, right? But I listened to those myths, and I thought that's what you did. Is every single nuance, every detail. So I'd say to the actor, okay, now here we're ready to rehearse the scene. Now you stand here on this spot mark that I've marked out, which works on my 24mm lens. And then you stand down there and you tell him that you love him, And they go, but I'm too far away to tell him that I love him. Seems really odd. And I go, never mind, just do it. It'll work out. It'll be fine, So there I am completely throwing away what is instinctively something important for the actor, for the character, and overriding them with my authoritarian rule, right? Mm-hmm. And that's not what a director should do. Absolutely not, So it took me a while to learn that you need to be flexible, particularly when you're doing scenes with actors and not just someone running down the street being chased by a dog or whatever. You need to give them the flexibility to create this scene for you. And it's at the end of the day, you can't. You might have a view about how you want to shoot it, but you've got to learn to let certain things go in the shoot, in the heat of the moment, right? And that's something that took me a long time to understand. And that kind of comes through experience.
And last question, sir. What are 3 of your favorite films of all time?
Well, 2001 still is. It has been since I saw it. I don't know. Because it is, as I say, the biggest, most famous experimental movie of all time. And the fact that it found an audience at the time is mind-boggling to me, that in fact had any level of success.
There was some
to the genius.
Yeah, and there was also some drug use involved with that. That's what actually made it so popular.
It probably hit the zeitgeist well in that respect.
Yes, it was perfect.
And I believe that only came in the second, because they pulled the film, I think, at some point.
Correct.
Because it was not doing well, and then they re-released it again as The Ultimate Trip, right? And they did that literally.
And they figured it out after, because I'm a Kubrick fanatic, so I've done so much research on Kubrick. Is after the fact they started seeing that the hippies were really loving it, and that's when they're like, "Wait a minute, let's remarket this as a trip," and boom, it was a hit.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, we found our audience. Hallelujah! So there's that, and then Stalker is my other one that I've passionately loved since I saw that film. I saw that film actually in film school, Tarkovsky's Stalker, because it showed me again, and it's similar to 2001 in many ways, but it showed me how to tell a more linear story, and I do believe it is it's more linear than 2001. But it told me how to tell that story through. It taught me how to tell that story through visual poetry, which I think is what it is, and I mean both of those films. What I think are why they remain my favorite films, and I like normal movies too. So don't worry, I do like a good, grounded, well told normal story. But I love those movies because they do stuff only movies do, right? You can't possibly tell not just tell the story, but you can't express the experience in any other medium other than in cinema, right?
Right.
With those two movies, and that's why I love them both so much. And now I'm struggling as I speak to think of a third one that compares, but excuse me, I'll throw The Exorcist in, which is another eternal favorite of mine. Because it gave me an experience that no other film has ever been able to replicate. Such a unique experience, incredibly driven, powerful, terrifying story that with incredible simplicity. I mean, that's the amazing thing about that film is it's the simplest narrative and it's the simplest amount of elements you could possibly use in a movie.
Right.
And so many people have tried to replicate, again, that movie over the years and with various levels of success. But that one really was again, like a game changer in movies. So there have been many. I could list dozens of movies.
One movie that just comes to mind when I think of you. I think he must like that. And I please tell me if I'm wrong. Blade Runner.
Oh, I love Blade Runner. Yeah, I mean, Blade Runner. I was a kid when I saw Blade Runner, and it was at the time it was I thought it was the most beautiful film I'd ever seen visually.
So stunning.
And compromised, of course, because it was the bored Harrison Ford voiceover at the beginning where you go, why does that guy sound so bored? It's like he's in this amazing world and he just sounds like he's bored out of his brain.
And we're down here and there's replicants and blah, blah, blah. I mean, I remember.
That's obviously
when I moved,
Alien, both of those two movies were incredibly inspiring to me. Alien was another one. Alien maybe even more so than Blade Runner for me, because the chest burster in Alien again was one of those moments in cinema that will never be reproduced. The impact that thing had at the time was just the audience were just like, I remember the palpable experience of being in that screening,
Sure.
Stuff like that, and it's stuff that you can't. I don't think we'll ever reproduce it. That's like, it'd be like seeing Psycho, which is another favorite film of mine, when it first was released in the theaters, which I'm I'm not old enough to have seen, but I cannot imagine, because I remember seeing it on TV again as a kid and going, wow, hang on a second, they just killed the girl who was supposed to be the hero of the film. It's like, who am I following? I'm completely lost in this film. I can't imagine that the impact that bold narrative decision would have had in a theater on the first release. It would have been mind-boggling, And so stuff like that, I just don't think. I think a lot of filmmakers we keep reaching for those moments. I mean, I reached for that moment at the end of Dark City, for that incredible, like, mind-blowing moment when you realize the entire story is not what you were thinking. It's something actually different, And, I was riffing off actually another movie that I love is the original Planet of the Apes, where, Chuck Heston ends up on the beach and you see the Statue of Liberty and you go, which I think has gone beyond being a sort of a
cultural phenomenon.
When you give something away in a movie, what is that?
Oh, it's the reveal, the secret, in the Sixth Sense or Psycho, or like the ending, the twist ending, twist ending.
I'm not spoiling. It's a spoiler, right?
I'm sorry. Sorry, spoiler, guys. All those movies, you haven't seen them, stop listening to this podcast.
Pretty sure. I'm pretty sure everyone's aware of this. That's that particular spoiler. Maybe not as many people are aware of the spoiler that I could give away in Dark City. But yeah, that was again one of those moments where it's like, wow, this is not another planet. This is actually our planet. The future. So stuff like that, and I just don't know that you can do that. I mean, Sixth Sense was probably one of the last of them where people were talking about it, and a film had achieved some incredible thing, But it's like, I don't know, that people, you just can't.
I mean,
can you do it anymore?
I remember, like, I can only imagine being in the theater to see Star Wars, or Jaws.
Yeah, that's another one that I look. I'm a big fan of the original trilogy, and I find it hard to wax lyrical about Star Wars on that level, just because I think it's, well, I won't say. I don't like saying negative things about things. No, I will. I just think it's a bit of a disaster these days. But yeah, I was there. I was in the original screening of the first Star Wars. I think I was.
God, that must have been amazing.
14. I think I was 14.
I mean, your mind must have been blown. Your mind must have been blown.
It was, But look, the thing is, for me, at the time, I was big into science fiction already because of, as we've said, 2001, and I was looking at, there were certain magazines, like this magazine called Starlog at the time.
Yeah, of course.
And a bunch of other magazines that I would collect voraciously, and I would seek out any information on films like Star Wars that were coming up, In those days, apart from a trailer, it was really hard to find any detail of films. It wasn't the internet world that we now live in. So I was tracking that film diligently up until the moment it came out. So it was already a really exciting, and also movies came out. They came out in the States first, so we already knew that it was a cultural phenomenon already. It'd been out a few weeks, and people were lining up to see it. So there were high expectations when me and a bunch of other kids, we call it wagging. We got out of school. We pretended we were sick, and we all went down.
The Star Wars flu. Yeah, the Sar Wars flu.
Yeah, and it was they didn't do like midnight screening and stuff in those days. We were there for the first morning or something like that. First session, Friday, 11 o'clock Friday morning, and we went. We saw the movie, and we went straight back in on the next session and saw it again.
Of course,
because it was just such an experience.
The last time
other millions of people.
Like the last movie that I remember that happening to was probably Pulp Fiction. Like when I saw Pulp Fiction in the theater, I remember literally falling out of my chair with some of the dialogue. It was just like one of those events. You're just like, holy, because there was nothing like Pulp Fiction before Pulp Fiction. Like there was, it was one of those groundbreaking films. Listen, we could keep geeking out about film for at least another 4 hours, but I will respect your time. Thank you, Alex, so much for being on the show. It's been an honor talking to you, and thank you for sharing your knowledge and with the tribe. And I truly appreciate everything you do. And I'm going to do my darndest to get you the 150 million, my friend.
Thank you very much, Alex. Much appreciated, and lovely talking to you as well. It's been great fun. So keep up the good work.
Thank you, my friend. I can't thank Alex enough for coming on the show, dropping not only his knowledge bombs, but his inspiration as well. Thank you so much, Alex. If you want to check out anything that we spoke about in this episode, including links to Alex's film studio in Australia, his YouTube channel, and ways to watch his films, please head over to the show notes at indiefilmhustle.com/419. And I also want to give a shout out to producer Jim Robinsons from Lunar Pictures, who connected me with Alex. Thank you so much, Jim. I truly appreciate it. And I really don't know if you guys have realized this, but I released 2 episodes this week of the podcast, and I plan to release 2 episodes of the Indie Film Hustle podcast every week for the entire month of December. I wanted to give you guys a little extra content because I know a lot of you might be at home, working at home with family and friends, and might just want a little escape to the podcast. So I am giving you a little bit more this month, my Christmas gift to you guys. And I want to leave this episode with a quote by the late and great actor Brandon Lee, the star of The Crow. Immortality is to live your life doing good things and leaving your mark behind. Thank you for listening, guys. As always, keep that hustle going. Keep that dream alive. Stay safe out there, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Indie Film Hustle podcast at indiefilmhustle.com. That's INDIEFILMHUSTLE.com.